Hey guys, it's Edwin here, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Grey Rock communication method or the minimize contact method. This is for you if you find yourself in situations where you have to communicate with your toxic ex or a manipulative person, maybe because you have kids together, or you are co-parenting together, or you share the same workplace, or you find yourself in just some situations where you cannot fully go no contact. Of course, no contact is the best way to go when healing after leaving an abusive relationship, but at times you may find yourself in situations where we cannot avoid them. Grey rocking method, just as the name suggests, is more of like being unresponsive to a toxic person by just being like a rock. It's really helpful because we all know that every interaction with a toxic person, because of their manipulative gimmicks, leaves a dent in our sense of worth and our self-esteem. So in this video, I'm going to outline you some of the various ways you can use to communicate with a toxic person or a manipulative person you cannot avoid in your life. One way to practice the grey rock method or the minimize contact method is to keep your communications very brief. This means that you have to avoid all the unnecessary details and only communicate things or words which are only necessary. I want you to look at it at this sense, in the sense that you are being charged for every word you share with a toxic person. I don't know if any of you have heard of the telegraph, which was being used in the Industrial Revolution as a means of communication, so over a long distance, over a short distance. So I think with the current rate, the cost was about $210 per 10 words. So the best thing to do was to write a message inside each day that it only conveys the important details and cutting out all the unnecessary details. I remember when we were in primary school, we were being taught how to write that kind of message and given examples like write a message to your mom using a telegraph. So you can write a message like, "Mom, coming home tomorrow," cutting out all the unnecessary details. So I want you to look at the communication with the toxic person in such kind of way, like communicate in a very brief way as possible. No extra details. Like something like picking kids tomorrow. No extra things like how are you doing, how are you feeling. Just keep it at that level where it conveys the message you want to put across. If you find yourself in situations where you have to communicate with them, always avoid sharing something of your personal life. You can talk about something, an interesting and mundane topic, without revealing any bad or good thing which is happening in your life. You should also avoid asking them about what's going on in their life. It's just about keeping that conversation to the bare minimum. If you do this, it will mean that you will avoid those lengthy conversations which may trigger you or trigger those feelings and may make you feel sad. Another way to maintain peace when communicating with a toxic person is to always communicate with them when it's only necessary. These may include you knowing the times you have to communicate with them, like when they are picking up the kids, when they are taking the kids to, let's say, to the doctor, or when you are having a joint work project together, or just an avoidable family meeting. The default should, of course, be no contact and only communicate when it's necessary to do so. You can also keep in mind to have a communication schedule when it comes to co-parenting, like communicating to them only on drop-off and pick-up, nothing extra. Do not add any extra communication like wishing them happy birthdays or wishing them happy anniversary, because that will only pull them to communicate back to you, and every communication you have with them is not the best thing for you as you heal in your journey. Another way to practice the grey rock method is to embrace email communication instead of instant messaging or phone calls. When you find yourself in situations where you have to communicate with them, send them an email, a detailed email, or send them a detailed response on what they've told you at your own convenience. Make it kind of look official, instead like the same way you would send an email to a boss or an email to a work colleague. One thing about email is it will keep them disciplined, because they know they cannot threaten you or harass you, because an email can be used as evidence in court. Something you also have to note about email is that word of mouth communication is mostly emotional, and someone can easily manipulate you by using word of mouth because it carries a bit of emotions to it. But when something is written on a piece of email or a piece of paper, it's not so emotionally draining because it's a bit drier. So an email will also protect your own mental health. When you are sharing an email with them, keep that email as factual as possible so that they cannot take you around in cycles. What you can do also with the email communication is to schedule the times you'll be checking your email so that you may not find yourself throughout the day just refreshing your email. This will really mean that your communication with them is more official and factual and detail oriented, and not the cat and mouse game of back and forth communication like in the instance of instant messaging. One thing you should know is, do not tell a manipulative person that you are grey-rocking them. Because one thing about a manipulative person is anything you tell them, they will use it against you and try to manipulate you further. So do not tell the person that I'm being boring or dull to you because I'm grey-rocking you because you did this to me. No. Just keep in mind the reason why you are grey-rocking the person is for your own peace. Do not tell them that you are grey-rocking them for a certain purpose. Just keep it to yourself. The last way to practice the grey rock method or the minimize contact method is to communicate with a toxic person instead that you show no emotion. This does not mean you're heartless. It means that you know why you're doing this is for the sake of your own peace. You can do this by communicating with them by avoiding eye contact, minimizing any facial expression, and speaking with a neutral tone, or giving dry responses, even when you are provoked. You can avoid eye contact by focusing on something else when you are speaking to them, because something about eye contact is it brings about this feeling of you are having a bond, and you don't want a bond with someone who's manipulative. You want to disengage as much as possible. Also, when you do not react to what they are telling you, it will mean that they will not use it against you. Because one thing about manipulative people is like they always wait for that reaction so that they can keep digging and digging so that you feel bad in the end. Interacting with a toxic person is not an easy thing to do because every interaction with them leaves a dent in your self-esteem and self-worth. So always remember that the default is no contact, but when you have to is when you practice the grey rock method. Note that the main aim of the grey rock method is to make them avoid you, is to make yourself uninteresting in such a way that the toxic person is avoiding you. Because the more they avoid you, the more you find more peace. Also, one thing to note is that the grey rock method should not be the end of your healing journey, because you also have to work on yourself to find inner peace and to live a life instead that you don't have to even know about the grey rock method, because you deeply know your own value and your own worth. The best thing to do with the grey rock method is to always come back to it and practice it when you know you are going to interact with a toxic person. It will really help you and lessen the damage of their verbal and constant verbally abusive ways.